Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk about chapter 14 now. All right, and deals about a few things. Talks about culinary math, but it's actually more than just math. All right. I'm not going to talk a lot about the basic math skills it refers to in the beginning of the chapter because there are a few things you have to know how to use in culinary when it comes to basic math. All right. First of all, we deal with a lot of fractions. You've probably seen that in the last measurement stuff we've done with half, quarter, three quarters, 1/8. Okay. So when you use that concept, you have to know how to add those fractions. Okay. So 1/3 plus 1/3 is 2/3. So you definitely have to know 1/2 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. So that's usually common sense, but a lot of times you have a trouble with fractions, so you have to know how to add those fractions together. That comes into play when you start increasing the size of recipes or you're decreasing the size of recipes and so forth. So you definitely have to know that. The other thing you have to know about is percentages. Percentages are huge in culinary. We deal with a lot of percentages, especially when you get into the restaurant industry. All right. So you have to know how to do a percentage. For instance, if you're running a restaurant and you want to know how many pumpkin pies to make for your Thanksgiving meal, all right. What you can do is you can look back how many pumpkin pies you sold as a percentage of total desserts you sold during your Thanksgiving meal, and you can also figure out how many people order so many desserts that came into your restaurant. So if you had 200 people come into your restaurant one night, and how many people ordered a certain dessert, the percentage. So then you can figure out how much desserts to make the next time. All right. So percentages are huge. We use percentages. We're going to get to it a little bit later on in the chapter. So you definitely have to know the percentages. What's also going along with percentages and the fractions is you have to know, so let's say 75%, okay? We can't really use that in a calculator, can we? Usually, okay? If you have a percentage button, might be able to do that, all right? But we have to know it's also expressed that way, 0.75, all right? So you definitely have to know that, okay? Now, also what you need to know how to do is you have to be able to convert a fraction to a decimal. That's really, really simple, okay? So a lot of people know that 1/4 equals 0.25 and 1/2 equals zero point 0.5 and 3/4 equals 0.75. Okay, everybody pretty much knows that. If you don't, you should know that. Okay. Now, if you don't know that, or let's say, what's 1/8? Not a lot of people know what 1/8 is, right? So if we took the denominator and divided it into the numerator, let's do this operation, PEMDAS, right? Operation, 8 into 1, we would get 0.125. Okay, so you definitely have to know how to convert fractions to a decimal form. All right, that allows us to use our calculations a lot easier. Okay, so there's a couple things you need to know on the basic math skills when it comes to culinary math. All right, and we're going to use those type of operations later on in the chapter. Okay, so now it talks about standardized recipes. Okay, recipes are huge. What drives us in the kitchen. It gives us a template of how we operate in the kitchen. Okay, and standardized recipes are very important because it allows us to give the consistency of a product and the amount we're making of each product. Right? You guys seen it when you go into your favorite bakery or you go into your favorite restaurant and you order your favorite food and you get that same food, that same item consistently over and over and over again. Okay. Now, if you bought a product one day at a restaurant and you really liked it, and you go back and order the same product the next day or the next week, and it's not the same, you're going to be very disappointed in a customer as a customer, and you probably won't go back to that restaurant. Okay. I'm sure all you guys, either at Starbucks or Dutch Bros or any other place that you frequent a lot, you get the same thing over and over again because it's consistent. Okay, that's what standardized recipes allows us to do. Is it allows us, no matter who's making that product, allows that same product to be used consistently and the amount. But also it does, it allows us as a restaurateur to make sure we are making the same amount every time. So we know how much to sell. So we're not going to have to make too much. We're not going to make too little. Okay, so that's what standardized recipes allows us to do. So it's a couple things in standardized recipes. You have to know the terminology. First of all, you have to know what yield is. Okay, yield is how many portions it makes of that recipe. Okay, for instance, on your lemon blueberry muffins, how many muffins did it make? 12, right? It made 12 muffins every time. So if I'm selling muffins every day and I know I sell 60 muffins in the morning, I'm going to make 5 times that recipe 60 muffins. So I know I can make 60 muffins every time. So that would be the yield is 12 muffins per recipe. Okay. Now you also have to know what a portion is. Okay. What a portion is, portion size is how many of that product you give to each customer when you're selling it. Right? For instance, getting back to lemon blueberry muffins. Okay. How many muffins is a portion? How many muffins am I selling? One. That's not always the case. Like if I'm selling a bowl of soup, all right, I'm selling maybe 8 ounce, usually a cup of soup is 6 ounces, and a bowl of soup is 8 ounces. So if I'm selling a bowl of soup, it's 8 ounces. It's 1 cup every time. So I can use my portion ladle we talked about earlier in chapter 12 every time. So I know how much soup to make each day I'm selling soup, right? So you have to know what portion size is, you have to know what yield is, okay? Now usually, because recipes, anybody can write a recipe, put it on the internet, right? But if you have a good recipe, it shows you the ingredients first, right? It gives you the yield, the name of the recipe, the yield, the serving size, and then it gives you the ingredients. Now it should give you the ingredients in the order how you use them. Okay, that'd be a standardized recipe. It gives you the ingredients in the order you use them. Okay, so for instance, lemon blueberry muffins, the first ingredient you use, flour, second ingredient you use, sugar, and then of course you got the seasoning and the flavorings that went into that dry ingredient. Okay, then the butter and so forth and so forth. So usually you have a steps of list of ingredients, and then you get steps of preparation. The one thing I want to talk about the list of ingredients though, is a lot of times you might have a step of preparation within the list of ingredients. For instance, it said 1 lemon zested, okay? So 1 lemon zested, zesting is a step of preparation. Or another recipe might say 2 cloves of garlic minced, 1 onion chopped. Okay, that would be a step of preparation within the list of ingredients. Okay, then after the list of ingredients, you get the steps of preparation. I like recipes that have actually numbered. Each step is numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be a good standardized recipe. Okay, and moving on from that, okay, you also have to know how to convert recipes. All right, that's very important. I referred to it a second ago when I started talking about how many muffins I should make, right? I said one recipe makes 12 muffins, but let's say I make 60, okay? So if I'm going to convert the recipe, okay, I have to know what the actual yield is and then the desired yield. Okay, let's talk about that. So the actual yield of the lemon blueberry muffin recipe is what? 12, right? Okay, so now I want to make 60. Okay, so the desired yield is 60. So I got that backwards. Desired yield okay? So how you get the conversion factor is the desired yield over the actual yield, okay? So what's 60 divided by 12? Is 5. So the 5 is our conversion factor. So what we would do for each list of ingredient, what it was, 2 cups of flour, 1/2 cup of sugar, I can't remember, what was it? Half a teaspoon of salt, right? Yeah, half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of baking powder or baking soda, right? And so forth and so forth. I'm not going to list them all out. What I would do is I would take this 5 and I would take the 5 and times it by each ingredient. Okay? So the flour becomes 10 cups. The sugar would become 7.5 cups. Did I get that right? No. You didn't get that right. 2.5 cups. Okay? I was looking at this. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. 2.5 teaspoons of salt. 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. Does that make sense? Okay. So this conversion factor is huge. It allows us to go ahead and convert our recipes. Now, why is that important to you? Well, let's say you are doing a party, right? Even though you don't go in the restaurant industry. Let's say you're doing a party, right? And you come across a recipe that makes 10, but you're serving 100 or maybe 50 or whatever it might be. You can get that conversion factor and times that and figure out how much of each product you need to buy or have in house to make that recipe. Now in the restaurant industry, this is actually huge. For me, when I'm doing catering jobs and so forth, okay, it's huge. For instance, I think I referred to the Touchdown Club before, the macaroni and cheese, right? Okay, so my macaroni and cheese recipe serves 10, right? And so if I'm selling 200 or need to serve 200, I need to know, okay, how much pasta do I need to go buy? How much cheese do I need to go buy? It's that conversion factor allows me to do that. Okay, so obviously if it serves 10 and I need 200, I have a conversion factor of what? 20, right? Okay, so it allows me to go do that. Okay, and that goes across everything I do. Now, not only the mac and cheese, but pulled pork and China, the rib recipe, all the recipes I do, it's this conversion factor becomes huge. Okay, so you definitely have to know how to convert recipes. You're going to have to be able to do that in chapter 14. Okay, so moving on from the conversion factor, all right, you have to know equivalence. It's so huge and it's so hard to remember. And I'll try to test you on that. Okay, equivalence is basically how much is of one thing to the other. Okay, so you guys might have learned this back in the day. My daughter called it the G man. Okay, so the G stands for gallon, right? Okay, so that's a gallon. There's 4 quarts to a gallon. That's a horrible cue. Sorry, I'm not an artist. Okay, 4 quarts to a gallon. There's 2 pints to a quart. Okay, 2 pints. And then there's 4 cups to a quart, or 2 cups to a pint. Now, if you can remember this, you can go a long ways. Okay, so how many quarts to a gallon? 4. How many cups to a gallon? 16. How many pints to a gallon? 8. How many pints to a quart? 2. So, for instance, lemon blueberry muffins, getting back to that again, okay? I had to buy buttermilk, right? It's a lot of buttermilk, right? Do I just randomly buy a bunch of buttermilk because hopefully I get okay, kind of throw a dart at it? It's like, maybe I'll get it right. No, I do not do that. That'd drive me nuts. All of a sudden, oh, sorry, student, I ran out of buttermilk. You don't get any buttermilk today. No blueberry muffin for you. No, I don't do that. You have to be precise, right? Or do I just go buy a bunch and have gallons of buttermilk that I'm wasting, right? I can't afford that either. This allows me to figure out how much buttermilk. How much buttermilk was it per recipe? 1.25, whoops, I don't know why I write a quarter. 1.25 cups, right? So I try to figure out how many students were going to make this. This is kind of unusual for me because it's COVID time. So I figured out, oh, there's probably about 50 students that come and make this, right? Because I looked at my class list and who's going to come on campus. And I figured out how much it was. And so I thought about, well, it's about 50 students, right? So 50 times 1.25 is what, 60, I think, or 60 plus, I think, 62 plus, right? 62 cups, okay? Then I go, oh, 62 cups, that is 5 gallons, right? Because, I'm sorry, I did that wrong, 4 gallons, right? Because there's 16 cups in a quart, right? So I started to buy this by 16, and I get 64, so I have to buy a little more. That's why I got 2 cups of buttermilk sitting in my refrigerator right now. I was pretty good. I only had 2 cups left over. Not bad. Maybe I'll make some buttermilk pancakes with that 2 cups. Okay? So you definitely have to know that. A couple other things you have to know on this, definitely know how many cups and quarts and pints are in a gallon. Okay? You also have to know how many fluid ounces. Now, this is where it gets tricky, and this American standardized measuring system is horrible. Okay, and we should have transferred to the metric system long ago, but the powers that be decided not to do that in the 70s. Okay, it actually talked about when I was in elementary school. They actually do that, but then it got poo-pooed. Okay, so you have to know how many fluid ounces. So if you looked at any water bottle, I don't have a water bottle with me right now. If you looked at a water bottle, it would tell you how many fluid ounces are in that water bottle. I think it was like 21 or 60.5, I can't remember. Those little standardized water bottles. Okay, so there's 128 fluid ounces in a gallon. Okay, now you have to be careful. This is where it's tricky. There's another type of ounce. It's called weight ounces, or it measures mass. Okay, so if I stepped on a scale, right? If I stepped on a scale, it'd weigh me pounded ounces, right? That is measuring my mass according to gravity. Okay, that does not equate. Does not equate. Fluid ounce does not equate weight ounces. You have to get your head around that. It's going to mess you up every time because I'm going to talk about other things later on. And you have to know the difference between weight ounces and fluid ounces. Even though they still use ounces, they're totally different. Weight different animals. You have to know the difference. Okay, I cannot emphasize that enough, or you're going to be totally lost what I'm going to talk about. Okay? So, a couple other things you have to know. Okay? On top of the ball, this is all volume. Okay? This is all volume. You have to know that there's 3 teaspoons. What small t is teaspoon? Get used to that. Okay? Is 1 tablespoon. Big T is tablespoon. Okay? There's 16 tablespoons in 1 cup. Okay? So you have to know that distinction there. Of course, then we get to 16 cups in a gallon, blah, 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 gallon man. You also have to know, and I've referred to this already, right? 1 stick of butter equals 1/2 a cup. Okay? This is also known as a cube of butter. Same thing, cube, stick, same thing. Okay? You have to know there's 4 sticks of butter in 1 pound. You have to know that. So you go to the store and buy a pound of butter in a little box, package of butter. There's 4 sticks in it, 4 half-cup sticks. So that means 1 pound of butter equals 2 cups. Why is that important? Well, just like I'm talking about the blueberry muffins, right? How much butter per recipe? 1/4 cup. How many recipes? 50. So what is that? 17 cups-ish. How many pounds is that? 17 cups. That'd be 8 pounds. 9 pounds, go over a little bit. Right? So I needed 9 pounds of butter to have enough butter for you guys for lemon blueberry muffins. Okay? I lost my cap somewhere. I guess I'll find out later. Okay, any questions on this? Now, I'm going to rate solve this. Okay? Because now I'm going to talk about something else. Okay, we were talking about volume. Now I'm going to talk about weight. Okay, does that make sense? Sure, it's hard doing a lecture without you guys here and getting reactions from you. But it is COVID time, man. Whatever. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about mass weight. Okay, because we use mass weight too. Okay. Like for instance, those big bags of flour. I don't know if you saw those big bags of flour, like big bags of flour, 25 pounds. Okay. So you have to know there's 16 ounces, again, weight ounces, not fluid ounces, equals 1 pound. Okay, you have to know that. 16 ounces a pound. All right. Now, what else wanted to go with that? You have to know that there's 28 grams in 1 ounce. 28 grams in 1 ounce. So that's all you need to know on the mass weight stuff. Okay, but again, totally different from fluid ounces. Okay. All right, moving on. Hope you guys got that. Let's talk about measuring. Okay. Now we talked about measuring temperature already. We did that pretty well. We hit that pretty hard in chapter 8. Okay. Again, we also talked about boiling point of water, freezing point of water. That's something you need to know. Okay. I don't do any, not in here. You know, in my world, do I convert to metric? Okay. They give you some how to do that. You can always find that on the internet if you need to do that. But I definitely want to talk about more measuring and portioning. Okay. There's three ways to measure things. And I've been referring to them for the last 15 minutes now. Okay. The first form of measurement is by volume. Okay. That's when you measure the cups, liquid measuring cup, dry measuring cup, any kind of stuff like tablespoons, teaspoons. That's all volume measuring. Okay. So when we're measuring certain things by volume, there's a couple tricks you have to know. Okay. We've already done one, which was measure flour by volume. This is very important because you try to get the same measurement every time, and unfortunately, when you measure flour by volume, it's never going to be totally accurate because I talked about already with the moisture content, okay? Because the moisture content of flour always changes depending on the humidity level in your room, okay? For instance, right now, how dry is it? It's really, really dry, right? So the humidity level in your room is probably very low, okay? So that means there's not going to be a lot of moisture content because the flour is dry. That means it's going to weigh lighter, or it's going to be lighter, or less moisture in each cup. That means you need to add more moisture to your product to get the same consistency you want. Okay. That's why if you work in bake shops, you would never measure flour by volume. You would always measure it by weight, either by digital scale or back in the day when I was growing up, triple beam or balance scale. Okay, but when you are measuring flour, you always spoon it, or they talk about spooning it or pouring it into your dry measuring cup and screen it off so you get a nice measurement. Okay, when you're measuring some kind of fat, sometimes you do this with butter, not very often because we already have that in our sticks. But usually we're measuring some kind of fat. Let's say we're measuring shortening. Okay, you pack it down. Okay, so you really pack that in there to get rid of all the air bubbles, and again you screen it off on your measuring cup. Okay, same thing with measuring. Same thing with measuring brown sugar. You always pack it down, right? Pack it down for brown sugar. Okay. A couple things about it. One other thing about measuring by volume. Okay, and I talked about this already. You never use a liquid measuring cup to measure dry ingredients. You can't do it. There's no way to get an accurate measurement. You only use dry measuring cup to measure dry ingredients. On the opposite side of that, though, you can use a dry measuring cup to measure liquid ingredients. And of course, liquid measuring cup. Okay, so that's the only distinction there. Okay, measuring by weight, we talked about. We get on a scale, we weigh it. There's something called tare. Okay, and so I showed you that on my digital scale back in chapter 8, I think, or was it 12? I can't remember. So if I want to measure some flour in a bowl, I can put bowl on the scale, push tare, and that would zero it out. And so whatever goes into that bowl is the amount of flour that I need to measure. Okay, so that's the second way to do it. The third thing, the way of measuring, is you do it by how many there are, the count. Okay, lemon blueberry muffins, one lemon zested, or one zest of a lemon would be one. That would be a measurement. One egg. Okay, and we usually distinct it by each. Okay, one egg each, one lemon each. Okay, so volume, weight, by count, the three ways of measuring. Okay, all right. Now I'm going to talk about edible portion and as purchased. Okay, so AP and EP, and you're going to hate me for this. You can ask any students I've had, they hate this part, but you have to learn how to cost out recipes. Okay, and we're kind of moving toward costing out recipes here. Okay, AP is considered as purchased. EP is considered edible portion. Edible, let me see if I can spell it right. Okay, edible portion. Okay, as purchased, AP, okay, like that. AP is how and the amount I bought it as. EP is the amount I served it as. Why is that important? It's really important. Okay? For instance, okay, let's talk about meat. Okay? Let's say I mentioned pulled pork. Pulled pork is probably one of my, at least for the team dinners, at least for the football players, they love my pulled pork, right? Okay? So when you go out and buy pork butt or pork shoulder, how you make the pulled pork in, you buy it in pounds, right? And I need to know what my portion size is for each pulled pork sandwich. 5 ounces. My portion size for the pulled pork is 5 ounces. Okay, so 5 ounces of pork is going into each sandwich. That's important. You have to be able to portion all your food to be able to figure out how much you need to buy. Okay? Now, usually I have about 60 football players and coaches. So I usually, about 60. Okay? So 5 times 60 is 300 ounces. So I need to buy 300 ounces. I need to serve 300 ounces of pulled pork. Now, if I just went out and bought 300 ounces, of course I could do that. I need the poundage to that. Divided by 60 will give me the pounds. And I don't have my calculator with me. I should probably go get that. Okay. Someone's trying to come in. Okay. If I just went out and bought 300 ounces of pork, I'm not going to have enough, because when you buy raw pork, okay, you have a water content. When you cook that pork, that water evaporates, right, and I lose weight. Okay, so the EP is, that's a horrible, EP is 300 ounces. Edible portion is 300 ounces of what I'm actually serving my football players. AP is how much I need to buy to get 300 ounces. Okay? And to get that, there's something called PY. It's percentage yield. Okay? Percentage yield. All right? The percentage yield will tell me how much percentage I get in my as purchased pulled pork, my as purchased pork. Okay, that's where the percentages come in. Okay, so the percentage yield for pork, raw pork, is 70%. About, give or take, it might be 65, depending on the pork you buy. So let's just call it 70%. Okay, 70%. How can that be stated again? Remember, you have to know how to state percentage in decimal form. 0.70. Okay. Now, I need to put this into an equation to figure out how much as purchase, or how much pork I need to buy, or as purchase, right? And it goes this way: AP equals EP divided by PY. Yep, we're getting in algebra now. Didn't think you were going to learn algebra in culinary, right? Okay. So if I put that in, if I put these numbers in, AP equals 300 ounces divided by 0.7, or 0.70, 0.7, same thing. Let me get out of your way here. Okay. So if I did this, I don't have my calculator. All right. It would probably be about 360. Maybe I'll get my calculator really quick. My phone. Don't go anywhere. I know you won't. Sorry guys, I was charging my phone. I didn't have any power left. Okay, so if I did that 300 divided by 0.7, put it in right maybe this time, I get 428 ounces. I'm just going to put it down here. 428 ounces. Of course, I would divide that by 16 to get how many pounds it is, because remember 16 ounces to a pound. That can be 26.7 pounds. Of course, would I buy meat exactly like 26.7? No, I'd probably go up a few pounds. Maybe I'll just go to 30. Chef needs to eat too, right? My workers need to eat, right? So I'll go up a little bit, maybe by 30 pounds. Pulled pork, that'll allow me to, I know if I serve 5 ounces every sandwich, I would get 60 sandwiches. I always go a little higher because the football players, because some of them come back for seconds. I take that into consideration too. But the important thing is you have to know what AP is, you have to know what EP is, and you have to know how to do this formula. AP equals EP divided by PY. Okay. You have to know what portion size is. You have to do your calculations. I just did that. Okay. Now that goes along with all kinds of different types of product. Okay. Because we have weights. Let's say onions. I showed you yesterday or the day before how to cut an onion. Every time we buy onions in pounds, usually, if I know how many weight I need of onions, I got to keep that percentage yield into play. So I buy enough onions because I don't use all the onion, do I? We got the root, we got the skin. Okay. Same thing with celery. Same thing with carrot. There's always waste product. Same thing with melon. You know, did you eat the rind of a melon? No. Same thing with lemon. You saw me throw away the lemon rinds after we juice them. So there's always things to consider when you start buying stuff. Okay. And you can go back and forth here too. You know, obviously, if you want to know the EP of something, okay, just times it on this side, and it becomes PY times AP equals EP, right? You can manipulate the equation. You guys know how to do that. PEMDAS. All the math teachers showed you how to do that, right? We're going to talk about costing recipes separately because I got a way of showing you guys how to cost out a recipe. I have a spreadsheet that shows you how to do that. So I'm going to do that later. Okay. We'll give this up to you. You guys will watch this video and you guys will take the chapter 14 test. See ya.